Good evening, my little snickerdoodles. Welcome to my next yoga vlog. I've had a very tiring week. It's been very busy, lots of work, but also very rewarding, especially once I got some sleep. It's very, very important for your body, and it's like the easiest thing to cut out. But I'm here, and I'm just going to discuss some things that, yes, hi, yes, Squirt wanted to be on the video. I don't think you can see him. Well, you can see his ears, like, well, that's hard to do. He's right there. Anyway, so kind of what we've been going over, sequencing, peak poses, some cool stuff that I'm going to mention here in a second, and then some even cooler stuff that we just went over tonight. Yes, I know. Squirt is very unhappy that I'm in this room again. Alright, so, sequencing. I'm excited about it. It's the actual part of creating a yoga flow for vinyasa flow. And so kind of what we're doing is we're going over each pose specifically. I think I may have shown this already, but so like the poses in the manual, we name them, and then we've got like alignment cues and variations and contraindications and breath cues, and we just kind of go over that and the Sanskrit that goes along with it. But we've done quite a few now. We've gone over cat-cow, Sukhasana, easy seated pose, which is not so easy for a lot of people, myself included. I tend to sit up on a block. Balasana, which is child's pose. Thread the needle. I feel like I said that. If I did, I just repeated it. Half splits, Ardha Hanumanasana. It's really fun to say. Tonight we went over Tadasana, which is mountain pose. A nice base, good foundational pose. And I do not have the Sanskrit memorized for many of these, which is why I'm looking for them, because I want to say it. It's cool. We did upward facing dog tonight, Urdhva Mukha Svanasana. And then we also did downward dog, which was Adho Mukha Svanasana. I'm going to get that one day. Cobra, which we did previously. Bhujangasana. Low lunge. Man, I've been saying this all week and I just lost it. Anjaneyasana. There we go. Could not get that out. Anjaneyasana is low lunge. Anjaneyasana. I think there's a couple more we did. Oh, there's downward facing dog. Yeah. Adho Mukha Svanasana. I'm just gonna butcher these for a while, and you guys get to listen to me. So I hope that you're enjoying that. My little snickerdoodles get to listen to me butcher words. Okay, so those are the ones we've gone over. So we've gone over all that. We talked about sequencing, and we're focusing. We started talking about the root chakra, Muladhana, I believe. I probably mispronounced that, but the root chakra. And so we focused on grounding poses, foundational poses, and how generally warm-ups in the sequence, when you first get on the mat and warm up to get through the flow, follow an elemental arc. So you start at foundation and go up to your peak pose, and then go go down into cool down. Haven't learned about the rest of the elemental arc, but we mentioned it briefly, so I got an idea about it. But we as a class got an assignment to pick 2 peak poses, which is going to be the pose you're working up to and then cooling down from. So pick 2 peak poses, create a warm-up sequence for it, and that's what I worked on over and over all week. Broke it down, did it over again, broke it down, did it over again, and I think I made it a lot harder than it needed to be, but I think I ended up doing more of the entire flow sequence almost up to the peak pose, which ended up taking a lot more time than I probably should have. But I have my warm-up poses that I think I'm going to practice, record, kind of see how it looks, maybe post it, I don't know. But I'm doing 2 peak poses, which I have right here. Wheel pose, Urdhva Dhanurasana. That's the one where you kind of like if you're on the ground, you push up and you're in a back bend arc, so like the top of you's shining out, which I'm not 100% successful at. I actually have severely hurt myself doing that before, so that's kind of my challenge pose. But also, I just absolutely love it, and I have done it successfully since I hurt myself. It's just it's very important that I warm myself up and that I have enough strength to do it that day, because every day you come to your body, it's a little different. I'm excited about it. And my second one I chose was Bakasana, which is crow pose, and I can do crow pose. I can't do it for extremely long periods, but it's really fun. It makes me feel really strong doing it, but I've always been a little stronger in my upper body than I feel like people associate with girls. I also feel like I'm kind of stocky a little bit. I've got kind of wide shoulders and a wide chest, and I think that helps on some level, but let me minimize my Word documents that I was just looking at. So, got that, worked on my warm-ups. In theory, have them in theory, so I'm going to do a little bit of practice on that. It's exciting. Also, the interesting thing about peak poses is they do not have to be difficult. It just has to be like what you're working towards people. And you have to remember, I mean, I was thinking about this while we were learning it, different levels that people are at are going to have different levels of peak poses that are challenging for them. I mean, obviously, anything that's already a challenging pose is going to be challenging for a beginner. They're probably not going to be able to get there or get there safely. But, I mean, for the longest time, just like a twisted lunge for me, where like you're doing this and twisting like on your knee, but in a lunge, was so hard for me. It still is very hard for me on certain days. So it's not like I have that pose down. I can do it all the time now. I've got to be strong that day. I have to have gotten rest. I have to have enough nourishment in my body, enough hydration, and be in a good frame of mind to get there, because I remember from previous yoga classes, one of my instructors that I absolutely love, it's like one of my favorite studios ever that I've ever been to, she was the first one that told me that like a lot of twists like that, and like seated twists or anything that's an equal opposite spiral in your body, kind of helps release emotions and energy and toxins in your body and all of that. Like it's difficult to deal with that, and so being someone that is not very open, working on it, but if someone that's not open, is very closed and shut off from a lot of people, to do that stuff and release all of that was really rough on the mat. And so it's not something that I really enjoyed doing and didn't focus on for a long time. Now when I took my practice more solitary, where I just kind of do yoga to YouTube videos and or just myself, I started doing a little bit more. I've gotten a little bit better at it, and I've built strength in my body. But it's just something that I think is really cool to think about. And everyone's going to have more difficulty with certain things. And it's going to be cool to celebrate those victories with people when they get excited about it. So, another thing that we learned last week was on Sunday. I do want to find this in here. I'm not 100% sure where it's at. Let's see. Oh, there it is. We learned about Ayurveda, which I've heard the term. I never really paid much attention to it, and I am absolutely fascinated. I've always been someone that's been interested in like all the silly personality quizzes and stuff like that you can take. And hey, there's Alice in the background. Hey, Alice. Hi, good girl. But I love those things. I like categorization and organization, and I love learning things about myself, and I think that that's cool. So all this kind of stuff's always been interesting to me. But growing up in the Midwest, it was kind of like, oh, that's heathen stuff and devil worship, and so I was never quite sure what to do with it, or like how to go about it, or if it was acceptable. And now I'm just like, I want to learn these things. I want to find out about them. I can do whatever I want. Also, this stuff's been around for a really, really long time. Like, longer, even. Just saying. But it's so cool, the stuff that before what we have as technical modern day science, the things that they figured out about our bodies. I mean, no, this is probably not going to be the cure-all for cancer or anything, but it's cool that you can take this stuff in, do some movement on the mat, do some breath work, and like actually experience the change of energy in your body. So anyway, Ayurveda specifically it predates the Yoga Sutras actually, and it talks about Vedic knowledge, and it's kind of like it's traditional Hindu healthcare traditions basically. It's holistic healthcare in a way. So the system of Ayurveda has 5 different elements, which I think this is like where it starts getting really cool, that I was like, oh, this is really cool, I want to learn more about this. There's Prithvi, which is earth, Jala, water, Agni, fire. So if you're, Avatar The Last Airbender fan, Agni Kai, yeah. That's all I can think about every time I read it. Vayu, which is air, and ether or space, I guess, which is the more common modern term, which is Akasha. And so we have these 5 elements, and then there's 3 doshas, and each of the 3 doshas have these elements in twos with them. So like Vata, so there's the 3 doshas. There's Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Vata is air and ether. Pitta is fire and water. Kapha is earth and water. And so all of the doshas are equally spread throughout creation. So we're made up of all of these doshas. And so the cool part that was like reminding me of personality quizzes and stuff like that is, so like you can be more dominant in one dosha than the other dosha, and so it's like you gotta kind of find out what that is, and we did technically have a quiz in here to do that. We didn't have very much time to focus on it, so, and it's just one, it's just like very minimally focused. It's not like it's going to be the most accurate thing, but we did take it and find out kind of what we think our dominant doshas were. That was really interesting. But before you can kind of determine what your dosha is, you kind of got to know there's Prakruti, which is your true nature. It's the energy that you're born into the world with, and that's kind of like it comes from where your parents are at the time of like your conception. Like it becomes your combination of energies. And then there's Vikruti, which is the energy that your energy shifts throughout life, basically. So like it's what you get after creation. And so there's energy shifting in the world all the time, and everything goes in and out of balance, and as you keep going through life, you're constantly shifting things and beliefs and actions and stuff, and so your energy changes. And so once you kind of figure out what your dosha is, your dominant dosha out of the three, that gives you kind of a good idea of like what dosha, when you get too much of that dosha constantly, it becomes out of balance. So like usually your dosha is, you're like right here, but then suddenly you get tons of pitta, and it's just like constantly like going up. And so instead of just being on this like even keel scale where you're in balance, now you're out of balance. And I think that that's really cool. I mean, not necessarily good, but it's cool to think about. So Vata is the energy of movement with air and ether. Pitta is the energy of transformation with fire and water. Kapha is the energy of lubrication and structure, which is water/earth. And it's really interesting. So like just like really, really, really brief, quick rundown. Vata is like, reminds me of air mostly. It's like high energy, anxiety, kind of some characteristics, creative, talkative. The person that has like all the projects, but when they're out of balance, they don't necessarily get anything done on you. They're like, there's too much going on, and I want to do them all, but I'm not going to do anything. But they're also like super charismatic, especially when they're in balance, and they usually have like really, what's the word I'm looking for, really noticeable qualities about them. Pitta, fire, I think fire mostly is like, that's how I'm doing it, even though it's fire and water. But like charged, emotional, can be, if they're aggressive, they can be out of balance. Good leaders generally, but they could also be like the greedy leader. And then there's Kapha, which is generally very chill, and like you kind of imagine that one is like just vibing along. They're the grounded earth person. Very sturdy, like a solid structure, and they like to collect things, like major collections. Like I'm thinking of a grounded raven, which is very strange. Like to combine those two things, it's strange, but it's, like I said, just really, really quick, but it's really interesting to think about that. And then the other cool thing is they had like this little chart in here which talks about like, so certain seasons are more dominant with the different doshas. Right now we're in Kapha, winter into spring. Oh, I thought that was Vata, but I also have probably been saying Vata wrong because I always want to say Vita or V2, so hopefully I haven't been, hopefully I've been saying Vata the whole time. But anyway, so we're in Kapha right now, at least where I'm at, because we're in the shift from March into spring, with a bunch of wind, bunch of wind. And then times of day are also, like, they shift through which energy is more dominant. So, like, if you're a Kapha right now, like the times of day for Kapha between 6 and 10, which also it is 8:30 Central Time for me, and it's the correct season for Kapha, then your energy for Kapha is just getting like higher doses of Kapha, so you could possibly go out of balance if you're not being careful and taking care of yourself. So basically you have to find the balance. So like if you know around these times, then your energy is easier for you to get out of balance, then you need to do the things that are helpful and comfortable and nourishing for yourself, where you're taking care of yourself to basically balance out the fact that you've got too much of your kapha energy going on. So you do other things to balance that out. Although I didn't mention that kapha is the one that is the hardest to push out of balance, but then they're also the hardest to get back in balance. Vata, which by the way is the one that I'm dominant in, is the easiest one to throw out of balance. And I feel that. I'm just saying, I feel that. Also, times of life has different kapha energy. So, different doshas. I was reading kapha. And it's, it's average, so it's not like exact, but 0 to 16-ish is kapha dominant, 16 to 50 is pitta dominant, and 50 plus is vata dominant. And I'm sure you can find this and tons of more information about doshas and Ayurveda online. And we are, I think that's all we're getting into on it for the most part. I think we're probably going to relate it to the different chakras as we go through them, but it's just really cool. I want to learn more about Ayurvedic yoga, I think, and kind of figure out what that is, but that's not anytime soon, because right now we're focusing on certification for Hatha Yoga and with a Vinyasa flow. That's where I'm at. Hatha Vinyasa. And then, because I didn't get my vlog done before week 3 started, tonight was the start of week 3's class, and we talked about, like I mentioned, we did some poses, so we're going to be cueing Tadasana, downward dog, and upward dog, which is the one I can't say very well. Downward dog is Adho Mukha Svanasana, I said it, and upward dog is Urdhva Mukha Svanasana. I did it. Okay. Also gonna start reading my skill in action book. I've got something in front of the screen. Okay, I got it up there. Wasn't sure if you had it in frame. So I'm excited to start reading that. And what was the other thing that I wanted to talk about? I was really excited about it. Oh, it was in the manual, and I put the manual up. We talked about I cannot remember at all what it's called, so I can't even say what we talked about. I have to get there. Raja Yoga, the 8 limbs of yoga, which Patanjali, I think it's Patanjali. I'll get all these words right eventually, maybe one day. He's the father of this yoga, created the 8 limbs of yoga, and you're supposed to do them in order because they build on one another. You start at a foundation, or I guess start at a foundation and go up. And so you had to do it in order traditionally, but modern time, the way we get to this is through asana, which is the poses, the postures. We do yoga with the postures, and then we kind of learn the rest of it, because yoga is actually the 3rd limb, or not yoga, asana, the poses, is the 3rd limb. Pranayama, breath work, which I've done a little bit of my practicing on here, is the 4th limb. I have all of them here. I don't remember what the others stand for off the top of my head. I've got it in here, but tonight we went over yama and niyama. Yama being how you act with others, and then niyama being how you act with yourself. But you also have to think of them both inwardly and outwardly, which makes sense. And then we focused on specifically, because you do both the yamas together, so we focused on kind of what makes up the yamas, and specifically started on the first one, which goes into ahimsa, which is basically non-violence. So it's compassion. And you kind of have to think of, I do everything in my yamas with compassion. So what makes up the yamas, there's satya, which is truthfulness, asteya, which is non-stealing, brahmacharya, right use of energy, parigraha, non-grasping. So those other 4 help make up the yamas, along with ahimsa, which is non-violence or compassion. And so you do all of these yamas with compassion. And I thought that was interesting. I probably butchered some of the names because, like I said, we really only went over ahimsa tonight. But since it's the opposite of violence, you got to think, okay, I'm not being violent outwardly to other people, but you also don't want to be violent inwardly to yourself. You don't want to be judgmental or say mean things to yourself. And I think everyone does that today. It's pretty rampant. So you have to practice this compassion towards yourself in order to help practice compassion towards others, and have kind of this gentle open space so that you can do that. So we have some reflections to go over for that, which I'm excited about. And I think I've talked about Radical Compassion on here before, the book that I'm reading about, or by Tara Brach, that we're doing a book club with. And we talked about presence versus trance, and trance being all the things that you're doing to take yourself out of presence, that good or bad. I mean, you could be just distracting yourself with TV because you've had a rough day, or you could be binge eating or drinking a whole bunch because you don't want to feel anything, or you're emotionally reacting to it. And I'm not judging any of those things. I have partaken a lot of them. Partaken? Anyway. And so in relation to ahimsa, it's like when you're thinking of separating yourself from other people, or you're othering yourself because you're being judgmental, then you're still in trance rather than being in presence, where when you're in presence, you're remembering that we're all connected by this thread of humanity as we try to figure out how to get through life. And so ahimsa is that compassion of all the connection. So it's important to kind of think through that. So I'm excited to go through my inquiries, because I'm going to kind of think about the barriers to compassion for others and yourself, and maybe how we can lessen those. So I think that covers a lot of the stuff we've been going over, very briefly, and this is a longer video. So if you made it this far with me, I appreciate it. I think I'm good. So hopefully, if you practiced with my newest Surya Namaskar video, it was a little, a lot less rough, I think. I have a feeling I'm going to be doing my sequencing recording, like putting things together more and more for this. So whenever I get a better version of that out and figured out, I'll probably post that as I'm going as well, but probably not my initial recordings to figure out what it looks like. So anyway, thank you for showing up and honoring me with your presence, listening for so long, and I hope that you have a wonderful night. I will talk to you later, eventually, whenever I can do my next vlog. I don't know when that'll be, but we'll get there. So, in a spirit of just a reminder of the things we talked about, be careful. If you're feeling out of balance, could be some dosha energy. You can figure some of that stuff out, because you can kind of figure out how to off-balance, or counterbalance it, I should say. Take care of yourself in whatever way that is for you. And then figure out, or think more about compassion, being compassionate to yourself. Be kind to yourself. If you are a yoga practitioner, then, when you're on the mat, how are you speaking to yourself in your mind? Are you punishing yourself because you didn't get that pose? Are you pushing yourself too hard? Maybe think about how you can approach yourself with more compassion. That's what I'm going to do. So, thanks for being here. Namaste. Be kind to yourself. Good night.